Hi everyone, welcome to our first video of the semester. This section of the lecture notes, which I have called Part 1, is all about how we can collect data, which is one of the first parts of the statistical process. So this first video, we're just focusing on section 1.1, which as you can see is a ton of text, so you really don't need me to walk you through it. Instead, I'm going to briefly talk to you about what statistics is and some of my expectations and thoughts as I develop my course and my especially assessments, which means the tests. So first, what is statistics? Statistics is how we can use data to understand the world around us. We should have gotten a glimpse at this in our first class meeting last week. So now, what is this statistical process I'm talking about? The statistical process really gets at what I think is important when it comes to tests. So the statistical process, I have 3 pieces written down here: planning, calculating, and interpreting. This is just part of the overall picture. In fact, I can show you a bigger picture of this. We're really looking at what calls here the statistical inquiry cycle. So we start with a problem. We say, okay, here's something I want to know about. I want to know if having a classroom tutor really helps students in our class, or I want to know if this hybrid format is going to be just as successful as my previous formats, if not more, right? I want to make sure that I'm not doing students a disservice by offering this class in a hybrid section. So that's a potential problem or something I want to know about it. So the next thing I want to do is then plan. Well, how exactly I'm going to see, does the hybrid section influence success? How will I know this? Well, one thing I could plan to do is say, okay, well, maybe I thankfully have a traditional class and a hybrid class, 2 sections of hybrid classes this semester. So maybe I will give the same exam for the final in all of my classes, and then I'll see, did the hybrid students do better, worse, the same as my students in my traditional class? Or I can compare them to the previous semester. So that's one possible plan. Is the understanding the same in terms of the final exam? Or maybe I care more about, are more students going to actually follow through and continue and finish the course? Because sometimes you'll see students in an online course, they have trouble sort of staying involved and staying up with the assignments. Maybe I'll have a higher drop-off than usual. So I should also be paying attention to how many students start the class and how many end the class. So I'm sitting here kind of come up with all the variables and information that I might think is important to analyze whether or not the hybrid section is a good idea. So I have my plan. I know what I'm going to study. I know I need to have a common final between my in-class and my hybrid. Next thing I would do is collect my data. Now, unfortunately, in this case, my data is going to take me a whole semester to collect because I can't know the outcome until the semester is over. So right now we're kind of in this still planning and waiting phase, right? At the end of the semester, though, I'll have my data. And then I can move on to the analysis section, right? So I'll be able to look at the analysis. So for the analysis, this is when I finally get to do some calculating, which is what a lot of stats instructors spend a whole lot of their course focusing on, is just how do we calculate stuff. But as you can see, this will probably be a week at the end of the semester. If not, it would take me a couple of hours. As soon as I finally have my data, I'll look at the average final exam scores. I'll look at how many students successfully completed the course who originally signed up, who are here at the end of week 2 when the drop deadline is. And I'll be able to make some conclusions. So that's the last part, is okay, now I know 80% of people retained the course and stayed in it versus 70% of people, and I'll be able to see if those 2 proportions are statistically significantly different, or whether or not I think they're different enough that there's an issue. Or but here's the great piece: it is a cycle. If I do come to some conclusion, if I find that I did have more people dropping in the hybrid class than in the traditional class, now I have to come back, and I'm not just like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to sit there and go, well, is there a way I could have influenced that? Is there some sort of intervention I could have added? Could I have sat there and sent out emails every week to the students who were not completing the tasks, or those people who dropped? Maybe I can even do an analysis on the students who dropped. What was it about them? And see if there's something that I could do for those students earlier on. So it is a cycle, and the analysis section is a piece of it. Now, keeping that in mind, that's a lot of how I design my course, is keeping us thinking about this cycle. And all of your test questions, well, there will definitely be some questions in the analysis piece, because that's sometimes what we focused on, especially exam 2. There's going to be a lot more broader, bigger picture, critical thinking questions going on in this course than you might see in other statistics classes. The last thing to talk about here in this first video is that there are 2 types of stats we're going to be learning this semester. There are descriptive statistics. This is just how you organize and summarize your data. This is what we'll be talking about in part 2 or week 3. So most of this you've probably seen before. Looking at averages, making pie charts. Nothing terribly new and exciting, but we will be looking at how these things can be misused, which is a very important and interesting thing. And then the majority of the course, in fact, actually, the way we treat part 3, we actually treat it a lot like a descriptive stats section as well, though part 3 is finally our first real look at inferential statistics. So this is when we can start drawing conclusions about our populations based on our sample data. Now, we're also going to see this in everything after part 6. Now, that might add you a question of like, well, what the heck is part 4 and 5? Inferential statistics all rely on using probability to make those conclusions. So parts 4 and 5 are all about probability, so that we have a good understanding of what's going on beneath the surface of our statistical methods in part 6 and beyond. So that's an idea of where the course is going. We're going to spend some time in descriptive stats land, get a little our toes wet in inference, and then we'll start talking about probability and then using probability as part of our inferential statistics in the second half of the course. Hi guys, congrats on making it through your first video. Up at the top corner, I put a little thing, so up there, I guess, where you can subscribe to my channel in case you want to see videos as I post them and move ahead. I also have a link to the next video. If you weren't in the playlist in order, you could see the next video. And the next video will be going over what data looks like, including some good definitions that you'll need for the exam, observational units, variables, that sort of thing. So anyways, hope that wasn't too painful.